Welcome to Thursday, our fourth day in the walk through Holy Week, using Borg and Crossan's book, The Last Week. For most Christians, the liturgical observance of Maundy Thursday begins the most solemn part of Holy Week. Along with Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter, it is the best-known day of Holy Week. It is a day full of drama. During the evening of this day, Jesus eats a final meal with his followers. He prays for deliverance in Gethsemane. He's betrayed by Judas. He's denied by Peter. He's arrested in the darkness, and he is interrogated and condemned to death by the high priest. And all of this happens before daybreak on Friday. The meal that Jesus shared with his disciples is often the focus of this Holy Thursday. At this meal, Jesus speaks words that in slightly varying forms have become the central to the Christian celebration of the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist, Mass, or Communion. Many Maundy Thursday services reenact this final meal. At Knox, we will be sharing in this meal on Easter Sunday. But today, it's the events after the meal that we will focus on. As the meal ended, Jesus and the disciples sang a hymn, and then they departed from the upper stairs room. They left the city to go to an area about 100 yards or so outside the east wall, a place at the foot of the Mount of Olives known as Gethsemane. I'm reading from Mark 14, verses 32 to 42. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little further, he fell to the ground and he prayed that if possible the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back again, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough! The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Mark's description of Jesus praying is very vivid. He tells us that Jesus is deeply distressed, troubled, overwhelmed with sorrow to death, and that he throws himself on the ground in prayer. The prayer that Jesus prays is remarkable for its content. Jesus prays for deliverance. He prays that this hour might pass from him and that this cup might be removed. Both the hour and the cup refer to the impending torture and cruel death. It's not surprising that Jesus would rather not go through it. And yet he hands himself over praying, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." Now it's important to understand that this does not mean that Jesus' death was the will of God. It is never God's will that we should suffer. It's not God's will that Jesus died any more than it is any of the martyrs before or after Jesus was killed. Consider this interpretation. Jesus' prayer reflects not the fatalistic resignation of the will of God, but rather it is a prayer that demonstrates trusting in God. Trusting in God in the midst of dire circumstances. It is a model of prayer full of trust. We right now might consider ourselves in the midst of dire circumstances. We might wish that this day and this hour and this cup would pass. We might feel troubled, deeply distressed, and overwhelmed. But it is not the will of God that anyone should be sick or die through this virus. Nor is it the will of God that we should be overwhelmed with worry. But it is God's will that we should trust. As the world moves from a place of fear and panic and anger, God is calling us to trust. Today, let us take some time to be like Jesus. Let us take time in our time of distress and trouble and overwhelming sorrow to come and throw ourselves before God in prayer. Let us trust in God. I invite you to join me here in the garden. Take some time to ground yourselves. Breathe in the Spirit of God. Listen. Listen to the sounds of nature around you. See the signs of new life sprouting up. Trust in God. Let us come to God in prayer. Let us join together in singing.
O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me. O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me. O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me.
Yet it is not what I will, but what you will, God. Amen.